Welcome to The Definitive Wrap, where we report the truth about American exceptionalism. We love our flag, we love our country, and we believe in America. The Definitive Wrap, where we respect people of faith, the men and women in blue, and our support for Israel. And now, your host, Bela Seabrow on The Definitive Wrap.
Hello, and welcome to The Definitive Wrap. I am Bela Seabrow. Thank you to Five Towns Central for hosting this show and our sponsor, Talkline Communications. If the rabbi, philosopher, and physician who became one of the most prolific Torah scholars known as Maimonides, or Rambam, as yeshiva students would call him, were to be alive today, what would he say to us? What kind of advice would he give to live in the world we now know it to be? Well, we are about to find out. Our esteemed guest today, resident of Lawrence, New York, Jeffrey Katz, gathered from countless sources what Maimonides would advise today on lifestyle, family relations, diet, and a host of other topics. Jeffrey published Amazon's top release titled Rules to Live By, Maimonides' Guide to a Wonderful Life. Many people that read the book say that they will keep it as a desk reference since Rambam's practical advice solves so many common problems. Jeffrey is a lifelong student and teacher of rationalist religious philosophy. He became fascinated in his youth by his discovery of the ancient wisdom of Maimonides, and he received rabbinic ordination while focusing on disseminating the ancient life-changing wisdom he had uncovered. Jeffrey is a practicing attorney, and he has appeared frequently on national television and lectured widely on a broad range of issues. He is also the author of The Secret Life, a book of wisdom from the great teacher. Jeffrey, it gives me great honor to welcome you to The Definitive Wrap, and congratulations on your book.
Thanks so much, Bela. It's great to be here with you.
So for our audience that may not know who Maimonides was, can you please give us a brief overview of this great man? Who was he? Where did he live? How did he become so great?
Yeah, well, Rambam really was Maimonides, or Rambam as he's affectionately known in Hebrew. He really was extraordinary. He lived about 800 years ago, but again, his insight, because human nature and the nature of things doesn't really change over the ages, so much of what he taught us when he lived 800 years ago is so relevant to us today, especially his practical wisdom and his practical teachings. And this wisdom is going to continue to be equally valuable 1,000 years from now, because again, the basics really don't change. And Maimonides always said, you want to be successful, focus on the things that don't change, a little more. People tend to be wrapped up so much in the day-to-day, and someone, looks at you the wrong way on the street, and some people blow their top, that They have trouble focusing and accomplishing great things because they're always distracted, the constant distractions. So, that's one of the things Rambam Maimonides taught us. He was really special because he was both a man of science, the greatest doctor of his time. He was doctor to the court of the Sultan in Cairo, basically the king of Egypt, at the time, who was the Sultan in Cairo. He was the top doctor, a tremendous man of science and, secular erudition, but he was also one of the most amazing and leading theologians and philosophers and spiritualists of all time. I mean, anyone who seeks a connection with God goes to Maimonides' teachings to understand it, because Maimonides dealt so much with it. So it's almost because he was so firmly entrenched and expert in both worlds that he really was, unique in that. And he was just a master of science and logic and medicine and all of that stuff. but also the leading, philosopher and theologian and spiritualist of his age. So much so that, of course, like you indicate, in all of the Jewish schools, Rambam is still poured over.
Oh,
His
of
works
course.
are, everyone's just busy studying Rambam all
Yes.
day, reconciling a tough Gemara with a Rambam, trying to figure out how Maimonides got to his conclusion in the Mishnah Torah based on the Talmudic sources, which people are sweating over. So that's in the Jewish world. And then, of course, in universities, people are sweating and poring over his philosophy. Because, Maimonides, Rambam was the bridge between the Jewish, Islamic, and Christian worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Aquinas kind of did for Christianity what Maimonides did for Judaism in terms of reconciling it with the best science of his time, with Greek philosophy. And then when Rambam was finished, Thomas Aquinas lived a little bit after Rambam and kind of took up with regard to Christianity where Rambam left off. So it's so fascinating because many in the Jewish schools who are poring over the Mishnah Torah and his codification of Jewish law don't know really much, if anything, about Rambam's theological and philosophical and, I hate to say it, spiritual works on the one hand, and also in the universities where they're poring over his philosophy and his theology, they're really not very aware of the volume and the importance of his work in the area of Jewish ritual law. So you have this man, Maimonides, his contributions were so diverse in so many different areas. That's why he's kind of uniquely positioned. Also, just the last thing I'll mention about him, just his general background, he had a very, very tough life. Oh. He was born in Spain, in Cordoba, and when he was a boy, the Almohads, who were a radical Islamist sect at that time, basically took over, and they had a choice, either be killed or convert or leave. So his family basically left, and they were traveling for many, many years throughout Africa, the Maghreb, which is Ma'arav in Arabic, Western Africa, and then they made their way eventually over to Egypt. So as a boy, teenager, and as a young man, he was running away in various stages from people. And many of his major works, including the commentary on the Mishnah and other works, were done while on the road, kind of. And he even, he even writes in his Mishnah commentary, at the end he says, "Excuse me if I made some mistakes here. Not all the punctuation is so accurate, but I was doing this while swimming across rivers and being chased by these people. I was on the road a lot of the time being chased, and the conditions were not optimal for putting together what respect was one of the greatest works in Jewish history, which was his commentary on the Mishnah, which is well known and studied, down to this day. So he really was just a fascinating individual. And above all that, he always stood for self-sufficiency. He always stood for accepting truth from whatever source it came, because truth is truth. And he really was a tremendous role model, and it's fitting that we continue poring over his works today.
Yeah. Wow. Some of the greatest people have had difficult, challenging lives. Yeah.
Yeah,
and he walked the straight line and gave so much to this day, which leads me to my next question. Not to create any spoilers or give anything away for people that will purchase your book, but what are some of Maimonides' instructions to living a wonderful life?
So, in this book, I've been studying and teaching Rambam my entire life. As I became more and more familiar with, the writings are voluminous. They are thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. As I became more familiar with it, I saw that there was such practical wisdom in there that if what I've done is I've actually distilled the most practical advice of Rambam from all of his writings, and I've even gone through all of his medical writings. Basically that thousands of pages, of medical writings. What I learned in going through his medical writings is that his main medical treatise, which is called Medical Aphorisms, is actually constructed similarly to the way he constructed the Mishnah Torah. In other words, in the Mishnah Torah, he codified all rabbinic law, all Torah and rabbinic law, from Moses up to his own time. He did the same thing in medicine, basically. He reviewed all known medical, I won't call it medical law, but medical advice from like Galen, from Greek medical advice, up to the doctors of his own day. And about maybe 10 to 15% of the advice in the medical aphorism treatise and the Mishnah Torah is similar advice because, things relating to basic human needs, he has to say it in a medical treatise, and he also has to say it in a treatise on ritual law and how to lead your life, because both are meant to instruct how to lead life. So what I've done is I've broken down into 7 basic categories of life.
Okay. I was gonna ask you about the different, if the book was divided by categories.
Yeah, it's divided into 7 categories because Rambam also believed that life has to be balanced. You're not going to be happy, even if let's say your financial life is terrific. If your spiritual life is poor and your family life is poor, you're not going to be happy. You're not really going to be. Well, and the reverse, if your family life is terrific, but you're poor and you have no relationship with God, you're also going to be miserable. So, so I broke it down into the 7 basic categories, which are character, because developing one's character is really a basic thing that runs throughout. And once you've done that, it kind of has a multiplier effect in all the other categories of life. But he also talks a lot about what you need to be successful in your career, how you can be productive and financially successful. He was the top doctor, so he gives a lot of health advice. And the health advice is really phenomenal stuff, off the charts. Obviously, he talks about faith and spirituality and connection to God. He believes that no one can be happy unless they have a relationship with God. Just like a child can't be happy without his parents, a person cannot be happy without a relationship with God, according to him. So to family life, he gives all kinds of wonderful advice for, the 4 levels of partnership in a marriage that correspond to his 4 levels of perfection. Advice for how to raise your children, be their advisor, not their boss. Don't try to control a kid's life. Don't try to make all the kids' decisions for them, because then they'll just wind up resenting or hating the parent. Instead, try to instill judgment in your children. Try to teach them that, let them make the decisions and explain to them what the likely consequences of their decisions are going to be. That way you let them develop judgment, you let them make decisions, and then they see that you're right most of the time in terms of how things come out. So you become their advisor, and they then run to you and turn to you for advice, because they also want things to come out great for them in life. And in that way, you avoid all the resentment and all of that stuff, because he points out, children are like trees. You have to water them, but you don't want to overwater them, because if you make all their decisions for them, like you overwater a tree, the tree is not going to develop strong roots, because it doesn't have to.
Of course.
Because the roots, the water, if you overwater it, the roots are never going to develop. So too, the kid's judgment is not going to develop in that case. And in today's world, when kids and all of us have all of this information and new ways to live and new values being thrust on us constantly from the outside, it is now more vital than ever to establish in your children an independent judgment ability, because or else, if you make all the decisions for them, when they get a little bit older and go out into the world, they are just going to, God forbid, totally be prey
Yeah.
to all of these ideas that are being thrust upon them from the outside. They really need a very, very solid foundation. Rambam also talks about, your attitude and removing, all the negativity in your life. Like, you have to get away from the gossip and the grudges and
Right.
all of this negativity, all of it, because it's very simple, because it's sucking out your emotional power.
Right.
Everybody only has a limited amount of energy. Rambam deals with this so interestingly in the context of a prophet, and how a prophet clears his mind and balances his life so he can be attuned to God. It's the same result in all of our lives and everything, the same formula we have to apply in our own lives to achieve any objective, to focus productively on anything. And then ultimately, there's the spiritual aspect, and that's an important part of it also. But the same principles apply to all facets of life. So when I saw how powerful, I always lived my own life. I kind of stumbled on all this when I was a teenager. Once I went home for Passover to my parents when I was in college, and my father had left for me a book, just a book on some of Rambam's ideas, lying around. And I kind of, he never told me to read it, of course, because that would have been counterproductive as a typical teenager. The first thing I would have done is not read it if I was instructed to read it. So just lying around, I kind of picked it up. Once I saw the power of these ideas, I was really hooked. And I've been studying these ideas and teaching it and applying it to my own life since then, for many years. And I was so glad that I had the opportunity to kind of distill this stuff. And, my book is, if you look at it, it's very simple. I really tried so hard, and thank God I think I succeeded, given the response I'm getting. Each chapter is only a couple of pages long. I focused each chapter on one idea. I laid it out very simply. I give the citations and the sources for everything. In the back of the book, there's a 30-page section, citations and inspirations, which goes chapter by chapter and lays out Rambam source material where I either quoted or paraphrased or with the inspiration for the idea that I discussed in that chapter. But again, it's laid out, like the 7 categories of life are laid out clearly. Each of the 7 sections has about 20 or 25 chapters. And again, each chapter is very simple. It's the kind of thing where, many people have told me they keep it by their bed at night. And before they go to sleep, they read 1 or 2 chapters. They think about it as they go to sleep. And that's really very appropriate, because Maimonides says in the Guide for the Perplexed that it's very appropriate to think about things like this in terms of improving your relationship with your family, with yourself, with your career, your character generally, to think about these things as you go to sleep at night. It's a perfect opportunity. So I'm very gratified that we're able to do that.
It's so fascinating, because Maimonides lived during what was known to be medieval times. So how is it that his strategies and advice actually stood the test of time, specifically in modern times?
Well, first of all, they're all based on the Bible initially. Everything has its basis in the Bible. So I think that answers your question. God is the maker of everything here.
That's right.
And when
it
you
doesn't
follow
matter
God's
what year. It's all the same.
Well, there you
Torah
go.
does not change.
Right. And these ideas, which he extracted, ultimately from the Bible, these are things which, again, because human nature doesn't change, it's only the minutia, it's only the details of life that change. The basic larger picture is always the same from age to age. The emotions that animate people, the things that people desire in life, they have not changed, since my mom's time.
Well,
Nor, I mean, maybe we'll start implanting computer chips and controlling people's minds. But until that happens, I think it's pretty safe to say that human nature is going to stay the same, and therefore all of this wisdom is really just timeless gems for how to lead a happy, fulfilling, and balanced life in today's world. And it's actually more important now because the distractions and the things that are vying to suck out your emotional power and your mental energies are just, I mean, exponentially greater than they've ever been. So harnessing the power to be involved in productive, creative things, tuning out the craziness. I mean, really just tuning out the absurdities and the craziness, what Rambam would call like the machashake hazman v'tachpulotav, where he said all of the craziness going on about you by these insane people, you have to try to tune that stuff out and focus on the important things. Focus on the important things because, if you're someone whose energies, mental energy and emotional energy is being drained all day by emails you're getting in and texts you're getting in, oh my God, and you getting involved in these fights over the internet from people you don't even know. People
definitely.
you don't even know, and then you're walking down the street, someone looks at you in a way you thought was the wrong way. So that throws you off. If that's going to be where your mental energies and devotions go, as opposed to retaking control of your emotional life and your mental life and pointing those energies in a direction that you have selected, not a random direction that's determined by some crazy person sending crazy, emails around.
Right. So what inspired you to write this book? We just have a few more minutes left.
Yeah. Maimonides himself, Rambam said that he felt compelled to write the things he had discovered down because Rambam said that if he would not do that, he felt like he was denying us our rightful inheritance. He said that. He said, my life would be a lot easier if I wouldn't spend all day writing. But he said, I have understood many things, and I feel I would be denying future generations their rightful inheritance if I would not put this wisdom down. I'd like to think that I stood a little bit on the shoulder of this tremendous giant and in a way adapted to our own age, and everything has to be adapted a little bit, to change with the language and the things that in your period you're accustomed to, because that's the purpose of a rabbi, right? To adapt timeless wisdom to your own period.
Yes.
I'm able to pass along some of this wisdom. What really is what I view as the greatest practical wisdom that people, really care about and that can really turn people's lives around if they devote themselves to it a little bit every day on a consistent basis. It can really be transformative for people, and it can really help people feel that, their lives are just so full of meaning and they're doing important things and their relationships they have are growing and productive and really helping their lives be as positive and productive as possible, kind of under the tutelage of one of the most amazing masters of all time, Rambam.
Right. So I understand your book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, it's available really everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, everywhere books and ebooks are sold. And, if you go to Amazon and you click through, you can see this book, Rules to Live By, Maimonides' Guide to a Wonderful Life. You could see my other books, like The Secret Life, the book I came out with a few years ago, also about Maimonides. and you can click through and get some additional information about me. And I hope that this book really does for people, what it did for me, and what I think, bringing the wisdom of Maimonides, the practical wisdom, in an easily digestible form, is something I was very humbled to do. Also, seeing the response to the book has really been amazing for me and very humbling.
Yes. I urge our audience to get a copy for yourselves, family, and friends of Rules to Live By, Maimonides' Guide to a Wonderful Life, written by our esteemed guest, Jeffrey Katz. The advice is profound. And hey, we could all use some advice on how to achieve happiness. Jeffrey, thank you for joining us today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in.
Bela, it was great being here with you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Definitive Wrap with your host, Bela Seabrow. Be sure to tell your family and friends they also can catch The Definitive Wrap on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, and your favorite streaming service. See you next time on The Definitive Wrap.